And if you don't know who you are as dad, or if you don't know who you are as mom and what that means for your people, it all falls apart because it always goes feeling, thought, then emotion. We forget that. And if they can just understand even that they have that process and that there's a point in the thought process where they can say, that feeling of anger is something I need to give a no answer to. Why would you ever take stuff personal? Why would you ever take behavior personal? Don't. Just say to yourself, that was a behavior. Now, what do I want my behavior to be? That was stuff. Now, how are we going to fix it?
Hey, everybody. Hunter and Nicole Otis here from Porn Free. And so, as you all know, I am a men's coach. I help men overcome pornography and reclaim their self-worth. My wife, Nicole, here is a CSAT, certified sex addiction therapist, a marriage and family therapist, and also does acute trauma therapy. But we are here today, actually very excited for this interview because I have a lot of men that come to me and ask for help. You know, obviously they say, hey, I'm struggling with porn. I want to quit because it's stealing my energy. I don't feel good about myself, et cetera, et cetera. But a couple other major issues. One is, hey, this is damaging my relationship. I need help now. But this is also not the type of example I want to be to my children. And I'm struggling with, you know, taking my anger out of my kids. I don't know what to do. How do I move forward from here? Can you help? And so the reason why we have our guest Nicholeen Peck here with us today is because she is an expert when it comes to parenting. She's written many books. I think she's talking to us from the Capitol. She's just recently elected there in Utah. So very, very exciting. Congratulations there. But
Yeah, thank
Nicholeen,
you.
you're welcome. If you want to just quick tell us a little bit about yourself, how in the world did you get into this parenting stuff? And how'd you end up there at the Capitol?
Yeah,
We'll go
well,
from
I
there.
don't even know if we need to go to the Capitol. I mean, that's just like a whole other story. I'd never planned on being here. But years ago, I mean, I always tell people I was just minding my own business, trying to be the best mom I could be. I mean, I did have a background in like psychology and special education and education. Like those were my areas of study and all that kind of stuff. But I was just trying to be a good mom, and I worked really hard to, okay, I'm going to leave my career. I was a counselor at a funeral home, and I wanted to pull away from that because it was always pulling me away from the family. And then my husband decided to go back to school just when I just left my job and we just built a new house. Anyway, it was like bad timing. And so I just felt really inspired, like, hey, what if, in order to stay home, I also bring other people into my home? What if we do therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens? So for many years, we brought troubled teens into our home. They were all between the ages of 12 and 18. There were a lot of neurodiversity issues that we would deal with, not just one, but it was like a whole sheet of them because they were level 3 treatment children. Many of them had been hospitalized, institutionalized, and would be if they didn't succeed in our home. So it was pretty intense. Of course, a lot of trauma, those types of things they were dealing with, a lot of suicidal things. I mean, it was intense stuff. And so they came into my home and we started teaching them. We were very, very successful. And people were actually kind of amazed by it. I didn't know why they were so amazed by it, but they were. And they started asking us to teach different places. And so I thought it would be really short lived. And then the BBC made a documentary of our family back in 2009, and shortly before that I had really started teaching a lot more because it was starting to be like kind of constant requests to go around places. And then when that show aired, I mean, it just blew up. Like everything blew up and everyone was like, where's your book and stuff. And so since then we've written 11 books about parenting, and I've lived like a month in Kenya and a month in England. And we've lived in China and different places and brought the family around the world, teaching people how to self-govern themselves. That's what we call it. We call it teaching self-government, because that was my plan with the foster children. I thought, okay, anyone can do behavior modification stuff. Well, maybe I shouldn't say anyone. Even that is a rough thing. But then there's something deeper than that. It's the change of heart. It's the person desiring to be a different version of themselves, which I'm sure if you're working in, porn work and helping people conquer themselves from addictions and those types of things, it's the same thing. They're saying there's this version of me
Yep.
that I've got to let out, right? I've got to live true to that version of me and not fall for this other version of me that gets in the way. And really the
Yeah.
same situation is with our relationships, our communications, And our parenting, of course, is all communication and relationship. But the biggest thing is the relationship we have with ourselves. So, how
Mhm.
we see us is a big deal. So, teaching self government is all about you learning how to govern yourself, you developing that better relationship with yourself, that lens of who you really are and what your
Mm.
potential is and where you're headed, and making the proactive arrows for yourself so that you don't end up reactively dumping on other people all the time just
Right.
because you get frustrated. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. This is, I mean, what you're describing right here is literally exactly the things I talk about with my men, right? And this is why I think it's so effective for them as they learn to work on themselves and manage their own emotions and,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
and self-govern is really what we're teaching them to do. They're able to naturally go and help their children because they get it, they understand it because they're really finally owning it for themselves. So
Yep.
so
Mhm.
for any of my guys that are listening to this, like just give you by way of encouragement, like, hey, the work that you're doing right now is going to help you a ton with your parenting just by virtue of what you're doing,
Right.
right? In and of
Oh,
itself.
Right.
totally.
And I love what you're saying
Mhm.
too, because it's not just on a behavioral level, it's on a deeper level of identity.
Who am
Like,
I? And
yeah.
why does this matter to me? Why do I want to make this choice?
And
Right.
why
And
do I want
Mhm.
to be this other version of myself? And yeah, it's coming at this deeper level of this identity work and working on
Mhm.
yourself, because
yeah.
that's where it starts, that self-love. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
want to put a little plug in too, like just a few years ago. So Nicole and I drove down to Utah. We were living in Rexburg, Idaho at the time. We drove down to Utah. Nicole had gotten your book, House United.
Hmm.
I don't know if I had read it. Well, yeah, I don't know if I hadn't read it yet at the time, but she's like, hey, this is really, really good. I love what I'm learning here. We should just go and do this 3-day course. That's kind of how we roll. It's like, if we want to master something, like, let's just
Just
go
dive
all
in.
in. Yeah. Let's go all in. Like, let's learn how to do this thing. Right.
Yep.
And so we came down and it was awesome. I mean, since then, I mean, we don't always do everything perfectly by any means. Right. But it's given us, what you teach has given us a massive framework to be able to
Hmm.
really successfully navigate forward. I mean, our children, we homeschool, and our children, they're just flourishing. I mean, they're doing
Mm.
amazing. Like, we keep talking about it all the time. Just, gosh, these kids are amazing,
Yeah.
and they're so full of life and love and patience and understanding. And for us to have the ability to, as you learn, like we were talking about before we hit record, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I just had no idea that I had no idea how to parent. Right. Like,
Right. Yeah, and that's most people. This is most people. And this is because we are not passing on the right information.
Right.
We don't need, so many people don't even have the right information. Everyone is reactive in their parenting, and we have so much selfishness that abounds. I mean, it's just everywhere. And so the people actually, they don't even know who they are because they only know how they feel. Like,
mm,
we're so obsessed with how we feel in a circumstance, we forget who we are. And do you know, who you are trumps how you feel? And if you recognize who you are, and you really sink your teeth into that and say, okay, now I'm going to be that person that I am. I'm going to really say, what does that mean to be the best version of me? Who am I supposed to be? If you do that, then those moments of weakness, those moments when you're like, well, I feel offended. What, you might say to yourself, do I need to waste my time feeling offended? That would be non-productive. And I'm not the type of person that wastes my time with that,
Hmm.
right?
right.
Or, whatever it happens to be. I mean, obviously some things we have to talk about, of course, and our feelings are real and they're not pretend, and I don't want to minimize that at all, um
But it's
but I
identity
do.
over feelings, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because we have this problem where, as a society, we have inflated the value of our feelings, our senses, our cravings, our whatever, and we've turned those things into our identity.
mm,
And then we end up losing identity in the meantime. And while we're stuck in this place, nobody really knows what it means to be who they
Hmm.
are.
right.
And if you don't know who you are as dad, or if you don't know who you are as mom and what that means for your people, it all falls apart, because then you become dysfunctional and not secure.
Mm,
Because children, they go to their fathers for acceptance, their mothers for wisdom. If the mothers and the fathers don't know who they are, They're not going to give the wisdom. They're going to give selfishness. They're going to give conflict, or they're not going to give acceptance because, again, I'm wrapped up in myself.
Mm.
How can I give of myself to this other person, give them what they need if it's all about me?
Mm-hmm.
And modern parents struggle a lot with that. They don't even know that that's what they're doing, and they're undermining those vital relationships, those really pivotal years developmentally for their children. And it's because they are caught in the self
Mm.
and in the feelings instead of who they really are in those truths. And really, when we're talking about cravings and addictions, I mean, really, I remember when I was at the UN once, and I hope follow me here on this, but I was at the UN and I was talking about sexual addiction, and I was talking about sexual exploitation of children and stuff like that. And there were these people who were against me because I said we shouldn't be teaching children how to masturbate and stuff like that. Sorry to say that word on your podcast. Hopefully it doesn't make it rank bad or
That's
something.
appropriate.
Anyway, okay. So let's say, so I said, we shouldn't be teaching children this kind of thing. And of course, from a global perspective, that's not friendly information, okay?
Mm.
Because in some countries, that's exactly what they are teaching children and want to. And there were some people saying to me, well, how can you say that? How can you take away a person's sexual freedom? And I said, let's talk about that. Let's talk about sexual freedom. If you get a craving and it controls your brain and it controls your thoughts, and you can't get rid of it unless you've taken some sort of action on yourself or on somebody else, then who's free? Because that's not freedom. That's bondage. That craving is controlling you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have a whole bunch of parents who are giving in to cravings and indulgences, and because we have this like very indulgent society, all the digital technology and the addictions that come with just, media addictions and stuff. I mean, those things are all things that can control and enslave and put all of us in bondage. No wonder we forget who we are.
Mm.
No wonder we get caught up in how we feel, because almost everything's speaking to that body voice.
Mm-hmm.
And not to the heart voice.
Yeah.
Well, that's super interesting because I kind of see two major areas that my men struggle. And one could be because of their own self-indulgence and just living by example, their children are following in the same patterns of that. So there's that side of it. But then there's the other side of it where they're being overly harsh and overly critical. Maybe their emotional resilience is so low because they're just indulging over here rather than facing the music, right? And learning to manage and cope with the emotions and learn that their own self-government, right? That then they take out their emotional strain on the children, and maybe they're not teaching the kids necessarily directly, like, hey, just, unbridled technology use and run away from your emotions. Maybe they're not verbalizing that, but by one, showing it in their example, but then two, being harshly, overly critical, it just drives them to it because, well, I mean, when there's that kind of emotional whip happening at home, they're just trying to cope as well, right? Their children are, and their children aren't getting the skills at home to know how to cope. So then they're turning towards the food and the devices and the pornography and all these things as well. So I guess,
well, and a lot of the reason is because they're not getting the proper attachment, which is the foundational thing that they all need.
So what?
Yep.
Did you have something you want to say?
I was just gonna add a thought that I had too around the feelings, because I do believe feelings are an important thing that we need to listen to, but it's being aware of and conscious of our feelings and the thoughts that are coming in, and having compassion, and not like he was talking about. A lot of times we're overly harsh on whatever comes in, or indulgent or reactive to whatever those emotions or thoughts, but like to be aware of them and then have compassion, but then to make a choice and not be a victim of, right? So not being a victim of whatever emotion comes up and indulge in whatever emotion, but that you make a choice. Like, is this emotion or feeling helping me to become that higher version? Or what is it that is, what is this feeling or emotion helping, giving me a clue to something that's missing, or that's something that I need to speak about, right? So that it can give you a voice. But it's really coming down to that. It can, if we listen to it and then listen to it and then discern and then make a choice That's the part of it, right? So to not suppress the feelings or emotions that are coming in, to listen, have compassion, be conscious and aware, and then make a
Right.
discern and make a choice. Like, is this, are these feelings and these thoughts that are coming through serving me? So
you gotta wave the hands around, turn the
I
light
might
back
have
on.
to move around, otherwise I don't have lights in my
there you
office.
go.
The automatic
Yeah.
light. There you go.
I just
I'm
wanted
not moving enough. I'm not moving.
I just wanted to add that piece, but most of us are reactive, right? Like, most of us are reactive and don't have the skills. And I think a lot of the clients that we do work with are really reactive in their parenting or whatever emotion that's coming their way. And so one of the questions that I have that might be really helpful for our clients was what would be, so if someone wants to improve their governance over themselves or become a better parent, what would be some of the first tips that you would suggest for that?
Well, in a way, it kind of goes right into what you were just mentioning, which is the whole difference between being reactive and being proactive. So you have to plan for where you're headed. So many people just keep getting stuck in the same trap again after again and again. It's like, well, but I always feel that way. Well, that person makes me feel that way. Well, all of that is reactive, and we have to take a deliberate step in a different direction, and it takes some bravery sometimes, and it's kind of rough. There are some easy things that you can do though, and these easy things actually even go back to your skills that you would teach your children. So for instance, one of the you guys know this, but there's 4 basic skills that we teach for children, right, in the teaching self-government parenting method. And one of those 4 basic skills is accepting no answers. So, as you're talking about feelings and discerning our feelings, sometimes we have to give ourselves a no answer. And we have to say, well, that's just a no, right? Like, maybe I feel disappointment. That disappointment feeling, that tells me I have to handle something. That's what feelings are for. That's what I always tell people. Feelings are these great signals, or like flags. They let us know I got to deal with something. I got to choose something. I got to handle something because I feel something, right? And this gives me an opportunity to evaluate my thoughts, because it always goes feeling, thought, then emotion. It doesn't go the other way unless you're just stuck in a power struggle loop. But even so, it started feeling, thought, emotion. So there's always thought in there. We forget that. And if they can just understand even that they have that process, and that there's a point in the thought process where they can say, that feeling of anger is something I need to give a no answer to. I'm feeling angry. I can acknowledge it, but is it going to be productive to do anything about it? No. So I'm going to give it a no answer, right? And then to be able to also use one of the other, and by the way, once you give the no answer, you have to drop the subject. So let's say your child does something that's not perfect, right? That could happen with any child ever. So then the child does something, you don't like it. So you need to handle it, but you can't handle it emotionally. So what you have to do is you have to say, well, the fact that my child just, broke my television, okay, let's say it's a big deal. My child just broke the television. Well, that's a pretty big no answer that I have to take in my life. Because is any amount of anger going to bring back the television? No, absolutely not. Okay. And it's not going to really help the child learn. So then I go to, who am I? Well, I'm the father, or I'm the mother. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be a father? You're a protector. You're a provider, right? You're a teacher. I have a whole book called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success, all about roles and who you are. And when you protect your children, you know what that means? That means you rein yourself in so that you can be the teacher. That also means, there's spiritual protection, physical protection. There's a lot of different ways that we protect. But when we're teaching our children and we're protecting that learning environment, then we're the biggest, the strongest, the loudest. We're saying, no, I'm going to rein that in as protection for my children. I'm going to protect them. So first you say, that's a no answer. Okay, I feel this way. Acknowledge it. That's a no answer. So I need to accept the no answer. Look at that. I'm putting balloons up. I didn't even, just because I put up the number 2. Apparently we're having a party. Anyway, so you say that's a no answer. So how do I accept a no answer? There's 4 steps to that. You look at the person or the situation. In this case, the parent would be looking at the situation, probably the broken TV. Keep a calm face, voice, and body. Does the parent even know what they are like when they're calm versus not? They should experiment with that, figure it out. And then say, okay, it happened. Or disagree appropriately with the child, but it's not going to bring the TV back at this point. So saying, okay, that happened is probably the way to go. And then drop the subject. Okay, so you've accepted, you've analyzed your feelings, then you've accepted the no answer, then you've said, who am I? What is my role in this? And by the way, if you're mother, Nicole, we don't want to leave you out. If you're mother, you're the heart and hearthstone of the family. Okay, you are that wise source that gives so much comfort and fuel, and you're able to guide and nurture because you're a nurturer. That's a really powerful loaded word. Look it up. It's a strong thing to be a nurturer. And so that means you're bringing strength to your children and you're correcting your children. So if you're a teacher or a nurturer and you have to do corrections, because that comes with teaching and nurturing, now you have to say, okay, so how do I do the corrections? So now you're going to give yourself an instruction for how you're going to do that correction. Well, and as you know, when I teach parenting stuff, I teach different skills of how to do correction. So I don't know if you want me to just share a few, tidbits for that right now, but one of the biggest things you can do, and maybe even if you remembered none of those other things I just talked about and you remembered this, it could make a difference. And that is, first, check yourself. Before you do any correction, before you do anything, take a little mini step back and say, am I calm? And figure that out. If you're calm, if you're ready, then carry on. But you might have to plan your words out so you don't mess it up, right? Then the next thing you do, instead of saying, what were you thinking? Or I told you not to, instead of whatever emotional thing that might come out of the mouth, start telling a story that is only facts that cannot include any emotion and that does not assume anything about anybody else. That's a pretty powerful story, right? A story that's just factual, that doesn't include any emotion, and does not assume anything about anybody else. So the story would sound something like, just a moment ago, I gave you a no answer about playing ball in the living room because I told you that with balls in the living room, something could break. So you did not accept the no answer. You didn't drop the subject because you kept playing the ball with the ball. And now our TV is broken. So we're going to need to do a correction about that. Let's talk about what you should have done. So now I'm going to tell another story. This is a hopeful, empowering story, but again, doesn't make any assumptions about the person. If you do not make assumptions about the person when you are correcting them, you will not villainize them in your mind. As soon as you think of your child as a villain, as somebody who's out to get your peace and quiet, who's out to get you, then you know what happens? You disconnect from them. And when you disconnect from them, it doesn't just hurt them, but it hurts you too. Your whole feeling of worth changes. Your purpose changes. If you are disconnected from them, you're probably just thinking about yourself and how you feel and your money and your time and how they are a disappointment to you and all that kind of stuff. And that's just good old-fashioned selfishness. Now, I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but anyone can fall into that.
Yep.
And we don't need to beat ourselves up over it. We just need to identify it and say, oh, shoot, that's a selfish moment. Better not do that one, or, hey, that thought that I'm entertaining, that's a selfish one.
Yeah.
Let's see, what is the truth? What's something that's true that's not selfish? Or I'm sure as a therapist you probably use, I don't know if you do cognitive behavioral therapy or what, but as I'm talking to people and helping them try to reframe some of their thoughts, I might say to them, okay, that is true. That wasn't nice that they broke the TV. But what else is true?
Yeah.
Did they actually know that they really would break the TV?
Something that's really important that I want the men listening to this to key in on is that when you're lashing out in anger and reacting like that, I thought it was really powerful when you said you're villainizing your children. I've never even thought of it that way before, but you're putting them as, as enemy number one in that moment, right? And
Yeah.
they're a child that really just needs to be taught. And so that's huge. I think that's a huge point of awareness of the role, not only that you're taking on yourself in that moment, but the role you're also placing your child in as well, rather than just them being your child that needs your love and
Mm-hmm.
needs maybe correction, maybe direction, yes, right?
Hmm.
But needs you to show up for them in that really difficult moment. So that was huge. And then I think also the role, what role am I in? When I'm lashing out at them, I'm stepping out of the protector role and
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting them
Right.
right into the line of fire. And what type of impact is that having on them? Because like even Nicole will bring this up for me. I have a very loud and powerful voice. Right. So even for myself, I have to watch, just even if I'm not even very upset, I have to watch my voice, because just the sheer volume, the decibel level of my voice can be terrifying to them. If they've done something wrong and they're already on edge and I'm just
Hmm.
loud, I don't even feel angry, but if I'm just accidentally too loud about it, or excitable, like they'll really kind of,
Yeah.
can easily cower in fear at their father, right?
Yeah.
But what type of an impact is that having on them? If that's something that's
Oh,
consistently happening all the time, especially when it is also compounded with real anger and rage,
Hmm.
right? Which happens a lot, especially when, when someone's emotions are out of control, it's very easy to go to anger because anger makes you feel powerful.
right. Or you're just
So
not
this
getting what
is
you want. I think that's part of it.
so
You're not getting what you want when
yeah.
you want it, and so you're getting angry. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nicholeen.
No, I was just gonna say one. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I one thing on what Hunter was saying was that you have this loud voice. Dads usually have the loudest voice. They're the biggest. They're the strongest. When the dads don't dominate with that force and that power in that way, when they turn the children toward mom, turn them toward truth, when they show gentleness to their children, that is a total sign of acceptance. And that's what the children are looking for from their fathers.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't get it, then they start going to find all the wrong people doing all the wrong things. They get messed up in their lives if they don't feel that acceptance from father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about earlier that I love that you said is that in that moment, who am I? Right? Like when you're in that moment of the TV falling down and you're having these emotions coming up and recognizing the emotion, but then you're saying, who am I? Like, who do I want to be? And I don't know if this is a part of your teaching, but to remember, who are they? Like,
Hmm.
because this is what I teach my clients, because I do a lot of couples work. That when I get really like maybe angry or even frustrated with Hunter, I have to check myself and say, who who is this person? This is my best friend. This is my
Hmm.
husband. Do I want to treat him this way? So I have to calm myself, check myself down and say, who am I? But then who's the person I'm going to talk to? And it's my child, it's my husband, it's someone I love. And should I be talking to this way? So I think
Yeah.
that that's helpful for me to remember this is a person that I love. And
Hmm.
and and what I love that you teach is that is about the heart, is the heart changing.
Hmm.
And that's something like that, maybe even getting some more tips is how do we have our hearts be more connected to our children, and maybe you want to even finish what you were saying earlier about that process of
Right,
turning.
of correcting the children and
Yeah.
what that looks like. And, one of the key things that you can do is decide ahead of time that each of the moments you have with your children is going to be a connective moment. Because
Mm,
you can actually feel closer to your children during and after a correction than you even did before.
Mm-hmm.
Corrections don't have to be negative. And I think a lot of parents, I don't even know who made that up. Like, why does a correction have to be negative? Just because they earn a negative consequence, that doesn't mean that it has to feel bad. There's even
mm,
some parents who would tell me, well, but my child loves extra chores, Nicholeen, so what do I do? And I'm like, still do extra chores? They don't have to hate it. When a person learns self government, they need to learn the cause and effect of any given situation and then possess a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control themselves. And so basically, you know, everything can be positive, hopeful, productive, empowering. Even the corrections can. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should say, okay, every single moment that I'm communicating with my child is a moment of connection. So that gets, then you don't have to think about the TV. You're saying, I need to have a connection with my child and do a teaching right now. In fact, I did find as a therapeutic treatment care parent, when I was taking in some of the hardest cases, if I would remember, if I would think of myself as a teacher, that made all the difference. Wait, I'm a teacher. I have to teach them, and every parent is a teacher. That's part of our role,
Mhm.
is to be a
Right.
teacher. I'm a teacher. What am I teaching? And see, what you were talking about, Nicole, was this challenging the thoughts in your head. Not everybody naturally does that. They get a thought, they accept it. But a wise person, if you're proactive, you say, wait a second, where did that thought come from? And they challenge it. They spend a little
Mm.
bit of time challenging it. And so when one of my foster children would do something very violent or something that I didn't expect, some behavior, I would immediately go, wait, who am I? I'm the teacher. I just
Mhm.
have to teach. I don't have to react to this. I don't have to take it personally. In fact, saying that statement right there, don't take it personal, to yourself, is basically you dropping the subject like a no answer, but
Right.
don't take it personal. And I know people are like, but what? It's my relationships. It's the people I care about most. It's my money that just fell off the wall. Don't take it personal. Why would you ever take stuff personal? Why would you ever take behavior personal? Don't. Just say to yourself, that was a behavior. Now, what do I want my behavior to be? Or that was stuff. Now, how are
Mm.
we going to fix it? I mean, men actually are usually pretty good at putting on the fix it hat, but sometimes they get really emotional before they put on the fix it hat. So
Yeah.
that's the problem we're really talking about. And I don't want to, put men in a box, because maybe not every guy likes to put on the fix it hat, but a lot of them do. I know my husband does, and most of the men in my life, they're like, I'll tell you what to do with that. And I'm like, okay, we're doing the fix it hat thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I think looking at the person though is a big one. So challenging your thoughts is big. Thinking of yourself as a teacher, making every interaction a connection. But the simplest way to make every interaction a connection is just to look at the person. And when you look at them, to think, I love you. I love you. Because your eyes are the windows to your soul. And if you can send that love from your heart out to that other person and really visualize yourself sending it, like, I'm just loving you while I'm correcting you right here, it's no big deal. Even tell yourself, it's no big deal. This is no big deal. I'm not taking it personally. I think we just have to look at it as a moment in time instead of like the moment of time, that I'm
Yeah.
Yes.
in. It's totally
Yes.
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I love this, and I know we're pretty much fresh out of time already, but that's the whole point and the desire that I had for this conversation, which I think that has absolutely been nailed, is just to really just start opening up the conversation about this for those that are just getting introduced to you for the first time, that they can, one, I think immediately they can see your passion about this.
Mhm.
Also, that guys, I mean, take it from us, Nicholeen has so much expertise with this. Like, we've taken her courses, we've read her books, not all of them, there's a lot of them. I didn't realize there was 11. Like, that's amazing. But seriously, just like I talk about with quitting pornography, it is a skill that can be learned and mastered.
Yes.
Just the approach that most are using is not helpful. It's not working because it's not focused on an actual progression of skill.
Right.
And same thing with your parenting. A lot of guys are just focused on white knuckled sobriety, right? Like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. Okay, well, that's not helping you. It's not helping you get anywhere. You're not changing. You're not learning. You're not growing. So, like, let's get you into an actual skill set. It's the same thing with your parenting. If your parenting feels completely out of control, these are skills that can be learned and mastered by anyone, provided that you're willing to get in the ring,
Mhm.
And
right?
Hunter,
And
when you say anyone, it is literally anyone too, because they're we're talking little babies. So, I mean, anyone. My granddaughter, so I'm a grandma. I got 3.5 grandchildren. One's almost here. Anyway, but my little granddaughter, the oldest one, she's 3 now. By the time she was about maybe 7 months old, 8 months old, she could take deep breaths when her mother told her to. She could be, oh, Clara, let's take a deep breath. And she would blow on her hand. She learned how to take a deep breath. I remember when I was with her one time, she was having a tantrum. It was on Mother's Day. And I looked at her and I said, it's going to be okay, Clara. It's going to be all right. Grandma will take care of it. And she just looked at me, and then she just started taking deep breaths. She said, okay. She just started taking deep breaths and she could just self-regulate. We're talking about a child who is like 1 year old, even less than 1 year old. But the key thing is her mama trained her. So we come back to full circle. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't feel like you have the skills, you got to train yourself, because guess what? Adults have to parent themselves. That's how it happens.
Yep. No one's going to parent us anymore, and we have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, we have to take responsibility for our lives, and what do we want, and then what are we going to do to get that mastery and the skills and become the people that we want to become.
I love it. Maybe I'll just end with this. Just, if you're a man or a woman listening to this, and your parenting's out of control, you're wanting it to be better, just imagine you being able to self-govern and regulate your own emotions, and imagine being able to share the gift of that knowledge and skill with your children. That's what this is all about.
Yeah,
that's how it's been happening for us, as a result of what we've learned from you, and our own, self-development of really facing our own stuff, therapy and coaching, et cetera. I mean, all of these different things, but it's absolutely possible. So, Nicholeen, how can someone listening to this find out more about you, your courses, your books? Where should they go?
Yeah, there's a lot of places, but I mean, the best spot to really go is the website, teachingselfgovernment.com. And even on that website, right now, there is a free Calm Parenting Toolkit right on the homepage, and it gives you 10 tools for calmness, which would be a great start for anybody. It's not going to teach all the skills and the whole system, but it's going to get you going and self-evaluating your calmness, so that those interactions with other people can start making changes in a positive direction as you learn then the rest of the things that you might want, that you can find all about there. And there's videos and articles and all kinds of things and podcasts. There's lots of stuff there.
Awesome. So teachingselfgovernment.com.
Yep, you have to write it all out. It's a long one.
Okay. We'll put it in the link.
Yeah, we'll put a link below the video. And also, if you're struggling with pornography, and that absolutely needs to be confronted, join the Brotherhood. We have a community of over 500 men at this point. So go to school with a K, SKOOL.com/porn-free. And remember, porn has an X through the O, PXRN free. There'll be a link below the video for that as well, so that you guys can get the help that you need. Nicholeen, thank you so much. We'll let you get back to your capital business there.
Right. Pushing papers around and talking to people and never eating and sleeping. It's a great life. No, luckily our session's not too long up here, just a few months. So
thank you so much for your time. This has been just valuable for us and for our clients. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for me too. Thank you.